So today we're going to talk about how to cut a stair stringer. Let's just take a look now at our example, and we'll go through the math and then how to lay out and cut the stringer properly. So here's our scenario. We have FF is for finished floor. So finished floor to finished floor measurement is 42 3/4. The finished floor thickness is 3/4 of an inch, and the tread thickness is 1 inch. So we'll take a look at all that information and see how it goes. So like I always say in the class, I like to draw it out. If this was a problem that I gave to you on a test, I would draw it out so that it makes more sense to me. And then I can write all my information down before I go ahead and do it for real on my stringer, which I got on the bench right here. So let's draw this first, and then we'll go from there. So first thing here, here's my floor, including my finished floor right there. And then I'm going down to hit so this is my subfloor right here, and this is my finished floor right here. My stringer's going to come down and hit down here somewhere. So my measurement is taken from right there, finished floor to finished floor. So top of finished floor to top of finished floor, we got 42 3/4 inches. So let's start with that as our measurement. And then what we're going to have to do is adjust the stringer for that, because we want the stringer to hit on the subfloor. And then we'll have to adjust for the height of our, the thickness of our tread. So starting with this, the math, the first step we would do, I'm going to take my 42 3/4, and I want to divide that by 7. So why do we divide by 7? Well, we want to get as close to 7 inches as we can for our unit rise. So I'm going to take that on my calculator and see what I get. So 42.75, and I'm going to divide that by 7, and that gives me 6.107. Okay, so all that, the decimal place out there, I'm not really too worried about. What I want to see now is that that's got 6 rises. So I want to have 6 equal rises of whatever it works out to. So I'm going to take my number 6 and go now with my 42 3/4, 42.75, divided by 6, right? And that's going to give me what my unit rise will be. So I got 6 rises at how many per rise? So I take my 42.75, divide that by 6, and I get 7.125. So that's each rise is 7.125 inches, and there are 6 of them. So now I would need to convert that into a fraction, which I can actually measure on my board there. So I'm going to take my 7 whole inches and take my 0.125 and multiply that by 16, and I get 2/16. So 2/16 is also known as 1/8. So 7 and 1/8 for each rise, 6 rises there. Okay, so I want to draw this stringer out here. Like I said, we like to draw this stuff before we do it. And I've mentioned that there are 6 rises, so that leaves us with 5 runs. If we have 6, I mean, I'll write that down. 6 rises, 5 runs. Okay, so why only 5 runs? Well, let's draw this thing out approximately to scale here so we can see. So here's 1 rise, 1 run. 2 rises. Just got bad here, didn't it? Okay, so now you can see there's 1 rise, 2 rise, 3 rises, 4 rises, 5 rises. The 6th rise takes us right up onto the finished floor right here. Okay, so with that, we don't need a run there, right? I'll take that out there so it's a little bit more clear. So there's 1 run, 2 runs, 3 runs, 4 runs, 5 runs. So 5 treads, because this tread here is not a tread. We just get a nosing at the top at our finished floor height. There may be a situation where you want to have a run out there, Maybe there's nothing here and there's a landing out here and we got to stretch this out a little wee bit, but very seldom do we actually have a tread level with the top of the finished floor right there. So usually what happens is we go finished floor, tread, tread, tread all the way down. So now you can see that we've got 6 rises and only 5 runs or 5 treads. This is what we want to lay out. Our stringer is going to go through the finished floor and land on the subfloor. So let's say we're installing this stringer here before the finished floor is down. So we want to come all the way down to the finished floor, whether this is concrete or this is a subfloor down here or some kind, it doesn't really matter. But that's where we want to hit before our finished floor goes on top of whatever we're sitting on. So there is our stringer hitting all the way down through there. All right, so one thing we didn't discuss before we cut our stringer out here is what's the length of our run. So we have a total rise of 42 3/4, 6 rises at 7 1/8 each. So we have 5 runs at what? So we didn't discuss that. So let's use our rule of 17. So the way rule of 17 works, we just take our 17 and subtract that from our rise, and the difference that we're left with is going to be our length of unit run. So 17 subtract 7 1/8 leaves us with 9 7/8. So our 5 runs are at 9 7/8 each. Okay, so now we know our 2 numbers that we're going to need to put on our square, 7 1/8 for each rise and 9 7/8 for each run. So the way this is going to work is similar to laying out a rafter. So I've got in my left hand, my long side of my square, my level side. So I'm always going to have my level part on there, which is my run. So I look at my notes here and I see 9 7/8 is where I'm going to set this side, my left hand on the square at 9 7/8, and my right side is 7 1/8. I'm going to slide that along at 7 1/8. So making sure that it's lined up. You can just hold it and lay out that way. You can put your little square nuts on there, your square dogs or whatever. I like to use this guy right here, and the reason for that is I can slide off the end farther than if I had just my square nuts on it. It allows me to do that if I could put a run right at the end of my board. So let's just go ahead and set this guy up. As I said, it's not completely necessary to use this. So 9 7/8 we want. And 7 1/8 we want on this end. It's a little hard to read this sometimes. So I've seen people make these out of plexiglass. It's a lot nicer, you can see right through it. Something nice and clear, but this will get us there. All right, so now we have 6 rises. I'm remembering that this is my rise side and this is my run side. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to slide this board down. I'm going to work at the top on my way down. You know, here's what I was talking about at the end here. Why I like to use this sort of a fence sort of setup. If I wanted to get a run right at the end here, if I didn't have this, fence here, I wouldn't be able to set it up that way. This part obviously would be off the end and it'd be all over the place. But now that I got this fence, I can put a run anywhere I want. But I'm going to start with my rise. I'm going to put my first rise at the end of this board. I'm just going to lay it out. So if this is a stringer that I'm going to keep, I'm going to mark in here that that's 1 rise. So I'm going to mark in on this side here because this is a part I'm cutting out. If I mark it out here, well, I'm probably going to cut that off after actually because that's where it's going to hit up against my, my upper construction. 4, 5. We need one more. Now this guy here is going to be important. We're going to have to adjust him as we go. So there's my 6th rise right there. So I don't need that run. That's my 6th rise. So what I want to do now is transfer this, bring it all the way across. So I can use my square somehow, like this on the other side of my board, to continue that line across. This part of my stringer here, which I just messed up, but this line here, the first line, is where we would want to cut it if it's going to sit right down and land on the floor. But we have to adjust here. Here's my first rise, and all of these rises are the same. This is 7 1/8 from there to there. But if I'm cutting this out, this is a cut stringer now, if I put on top of here 1 inch of rise, which is what my tread will be, because that's what my plans say. I got a 1 inch rise or 1 inch thick tread. So I had an inch here. Now my first step from here to the top here is going to be 8 1/8, and the next one's fine. All right, because if I bring this up an inch from here and this one up an inch, then my total rise is still 7 1/8, but this is where it makes a difference right down here. So we have to adjust our stringer for that. So if I'm adding an inch here, I have to take an inch off the bottom here. So at this point it might be easier to use my square off, but what I've done is I've lined this up here. There's 1 inch of rise here, which I'm cutting off. So I'm going to draw that across there. So there's my 1 inch, allowing for my tread thickness here. So back to our plans again, it says that we have a 3/4 inch finished floor. So we have adjusted for that. Now I'm going to have a 3/4 inch finished floor, which comes on here. So to allow for that, I have to bring this back down 3/4 of an inch, so that my finished floor height ends up at this point right here. So taking 3/4 and adding it back on. So from here, I'm just going to line up here at my 2 inch mark and take 3/4 here to add back on. Mark it right there, slide it along here. And now that's where I need to cut this off right there at that line. Okay, now yeah, there's a shortcut for that. We could have added our tread thickness and subtracted from our tread thickness the finished floor thickness, and what we're left with is that 1/4 of an inch right there that we're taking off. So yes, we could have mathed it, but I just laid it all out so we could see exactly what's going on here. So this is cut out, this is cut out, so is this, so is this, so is this, and then up here we have to do a few things. So this is also cut out. So this is our last rise, where we step up here onto the floor. So it depends on what sort of finish we've got, where this ends up hitting. Then I'll show you on our drawing where this ends up. Okay, so now we need to talk about how we're going to complete the top of this stringer. So a couple of things that we have going on here. This is our upper construction. We have 2x10 floor joists. We have 3/4 inch finished floor. So what we need to do is figure out the difference between this whole assembly and the distance from top of finished floor to the top of our stringer, which is what we laid out. All these lines here that we have laid out are our top of stringer. We add on top of that your tread after, but we're not concerned about that. So we have this point drawn and laid out on our stringer currently, right there. So the distance from here to here is 7 1/8 plus 1 inch, so that total distance is 8 1/8. So let's subtract that from the distance from here to here, so that we can put this appropriate notch in here, and then we can finish this off nicely on our ceiling when we have to finish that off. So we have 3/4 of an inch here, and a 2x10 is going to be 9 1/4. So 9 1/4 plus 3/4 of an inch gives us 10 inches from here to here. So 10 inches total, and we want to subtract 8 1/8, so that leaves us with 1 7/8. So 1 7/8 is how much this measurement is right here that we'll be cutting out and laying it out straight across here, so that again, when we install this, this hits up tight against there. All right, so here's our top tread and our final rise before we hit the finished floor up here. So we know already that this is 7 1/8 to here, and we calculated on our math right here that we need to go 1 7/8 beyond that. So we're going to take that 1 7/8 out of here and then square it back across here, so we end up with a nice look there. So I'm going to use my square here. I'm picking a 3 there, zeroing it at the 3. There's my 1 7/8. I have to extend this line down, so I'll draw that like that. There's my 1 7/8 mark. Slide my square along here, hit this, and bring that across like that. So now we can see that this is the bottom of our 2x10 joist. Is going to hit right there. All we need to do then is push that up when we fasten it on. We can worry about our risers and whatnot later on, but that's a basic look of our stringer, and we're going to cut it all out. This is all cut out here. Now, use your circular saw to cut in and stop in those corners and cut in, and then you finish that off either with a jigsaw or your hand saw. I prefer a hand saw myself, just because the curvature of the saw is not going to get right in to cut that off, especially if we're working with a 2-inch stock as opposed to this thin piece of plywood I've got here. So here we are with our finished stringer. You can see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the 6th rise is to the finished floor. There's our little notch to fit around the header. It goes right in there. And then we modified the bottom to fit right onto the subfloor and lengthened it for the thickness of the finished floor. We also shortened it for the thickness of the tread. And that's it.